What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more J-drama score, and we're going to listen to a tune from a show I've yet to talk about or react to any of the tracks from the soundtrack from, and that is White Lab, a science-based detective show from 2014. I watched it once about a year or so after it came out, so about 10 years ago now, meaning that when it comes to the synopsis of the show, I only have vague memories, but again, I do remember that it's a lab-based detective show, though it's not just about processing data. You know, there's one guy who I remember is good at picking up on when people are lying, so it is a formal, like, detective investigative show, but with an emphasis on scientific evidence, you know, hard data to back up what the investigative team is pursuing. And yes, it's scored by Kimura Hideakira, a name that has showed up in a number of soundtracks. And when I was looking through my J-drama music collection for a show that I hadn't reacted to any of the tunes from the soundtrack for, I didn't remember that he had actually scored it, so that's a cool little bit of crossover. So we're going to listen to two tracks in this batch. I'll split them up into separate videos, but we're going to listen to two different versions of the main theme from White Lab, or White Lab main theme. The first one is given the subtitle Sorrow, and indeed, it has this pained, reflective, melancholic, sorrowful type of atmosphere. But of course, if you're trying to figure out a case where someone has been murdered, or a cold case where justice was never served, that type of feeling, I think, is bound up in the case. So I think it is very well suited to the atmosphere it's trying to convey. So let's give it a listen. This is White Lab main theme Sorrow, from the 2014 score to the show White Lab, which again is composed by Kimura Hideakira. Beautiful. And as I was listening to it now, I don't remember. Well, that's a little cheating. That's the next track. So more on that in the next video. I will say the way my brain interpreted it here is that the piano theme in isolation feels like the emotional state of friends or family of the victim of a given investigation, which is to say, typically cases like this, shows like this, they're about murder cases where someone has been killed. And in that regard, it feels like the deeply intimate and melancholic pain of someone who may know the victim. And then the larger, like, strings feels like the gravity of the case overall, the forces that are surrounding the radius, the impact of that murder, and even the impact emotionally on the investigators who, you know, to the best of their professional ability, try not to get too personally invested in a case because that can skew data or, you know, lead you to perhaps, you know, neglect other cases and so on. But inevitably there is some level of emotional impact, and, you know, not just in J-dramas or TV shows more generally, but in real life. And I think that's one of the beauties of art, is that it allows us to process things which really happen, but in a way that is done with good music and compelling acting, and maybe more than in real life, an end that gives us some sense of closure and satisfaction. And so I feel like the strings and the bigger composition or arrangement of the second half of the tune feels like the process of the case coming to light, people working on it, again, it impacting even the investigators and ideally getting solved. And the way the strings bring it to a conclusion feels like it might be indeed the case finally getting some sense of closure and justice for the victims and the victims' family and friends and so on. So yeah, I don't remember if that's exactly how it's used in the show. Like I said, it's been probably a decade since I've seen this, which means it would be good for a watch-along. We'll have to put that on the very long, ever-lengthening list. But that in the moment is the way my brain took the tune. So I think it's a beautiful piece. Shout out to Kimura Hideakira, a great composer, and I'm sort of remembering / realizing that to an even greater degree recently, which is why it's fun to do these reactions, even if this particular reaction playlist is a lesser traveled one relative to many of the others I do. But hey, part of why I started this channel is to bring music and enjoyments that I have to other people, and for some people at least, even if only a few in some cases, to say, oh, you know what, that is great, I'm interested in that, I enjoy hearing that and I'd like to know more. So yes, although I do reactions to groups and artists that are relatively new to me and that many people out there are looking to talk about and share information with and share the catalog of, which of course is fantastic for me, this is sort of the other side of my channel. So once again, shout out to Kimura Hideakira. I do at some point want to go through this show. It's going to have to go behind several others in the queue, I think, but it would be nice, because when I was going through my J-drama CD set, I was like, oh, you know, I remember enjoying this show. It's been a while. I only vaguely remember the details or the, you know, premise of the show, not even any of the specific episodes, so it would be nice. In any case, let me know what you think of the tune, and I will see you next time. Peace.